Good day and welcome back to another Dbz Dokkan Metal video. And I thought in this video we could talk about part 3 of large celebrations and just talk about, what kind of new content we can expect at celebrations, how much that content matters to us, whether we have enough content, and just things in general. So what's happened with celebrations lately over the last 2 years or so is they've added in part 3 to these large celebrations: Sunday, worldwide celebration, anniversary, and they've made it a common theme among the big celebrations. And a lot of people feel like part 3 is too much, or should I say, feels like part 3 makes the event feel long in the tooth. So what I thought we'd do is we'd talk about the event, and we talk about just the entire celebration in total, and just discuss what is content, what isn't content, the amount of stamina we use, and just everything in general. So if we look at the worldwide celebration, it began on the 25th of August 2021. The DFEs were released on the 27th, but the celebration began on the 25th of August 2021. That gives us exactly 40 days roughly until the 5th of October expiry. It depends on your time zone, etc., but it's 40 days. If you take 40 days, you get 12 stamina per hour and you have 24 hours per day. That means you get 288 stamina a day, and in total, you will receive 11,520 stamina throughout the entire global worldwide download celebration event. So what we're going to do is we're going to look at the new content that they added in. We're going to take a look at when all these features were added in, and we're going to assess whether we got our bang for our buck. Take note that obviously the third part to the anniversary occurred on the 22nd. So from the third part to the end, you have about 2 weeks, and you had about 2 weeks between each section. You had part 1 obviously started on the 25th, the second part started on the 8th, and then the final part 3, started on the 22nd. So you had about roughly a 2-week break between all of this to do the content. But the first thing that we're going to want to obviously take a look at is all the story events. Now we'll discuss what constitutes content as well, and we'll talk about endgame content as well and things like that don't cost stamina. But it is important to note that we're only going to talk about the new events added in. We're not going to be discussing any dailies and things like that, because those do use stamina, things like the Hercule event and that. But obviously, we want to kind of just focus in on the new stuff added in from the perspective of a player that had all the pre-prep work done by doing all the previous content before. So nothing like farming the Bardock event and anything again, all of that. So the Saiyan and Rebellion event gave us 5 stages. The obviously Emperor's Intentions event gave us 7 stages, and the Legendary Super Saiyan event gave us 7 stages as well. You had to complete each stage once, obviously, to get all the stones and to get some of the mission rewards. So that totaled to 150 stamina in total across the 3 events for the first difficulty, and 285 for the second difficulty. Obviously, in terms of farming the event, I generally said that players would have had to farm at least 10 times on the max difficulty per event for the medals and the character, depending on your bonus. At least 10 times, that's 150 additional stamina per event. And then for the support memory across the Legendary Super Saiyan and the Emperor's Intention events, I said you would have to farm at least 10 more times as well, which would give you another 300 stamina across those 2 events. Now, it's important when you look at this, team bonuses, oolong bonus, whether you use your boosts, what kind of units you have in your box already, whether you've pre-farmed some of the other necessary units, what order you farm these units, and just generally luck is factored into this. So for someone like me, 10 to 12 times to farm the units for the easy A copies and for the hidden potential and the super attack is relatively straightforward. For someone who's brand new to the game, it's going to take a little bit longer. So you will have to factor those into the end calculation. But like I said, we're going to try and take it from the perspective of a player that already has units in his box that he can use. He at least has TURs across the board and things like that, because otherwise you end up starting to debate the nitty gritty. You end up starting to say, well, if you're a new player, this is X. We're trying to look at it from the perspective of someone who at least has enough units to prep into this event. So then the next thing we need to take a look at is obviously the growth events. Now, like I said before, we're not going to be including things like hidden potential and all of that. We'll discuss that just now. But the main thing is obviously Belmont on Duty. So Belmont on Duty actually came out on the 8th. And it looks like it's going to be roughly up for 27 days or so, which obviously is a very big score in terms of stones. But 20 stamina a day, that is going to be 540 stamina. So quite a lot of stamina for the Belmo event. Obviously a lot of XP as well, and we will talk about that later. But it is quite a lot of stamina. So obviously a nice event as well. Everyone likes doing it, nice, short, and simple. The other events like A Trial Towards a New Horizon, the gear events, the hidden potential system events, the reason I haven't added those into the calculation is because obviously some people run them, some people don't. Like on weekends, I always run the hidden potential event because all of them are up and it's great to get orbs. Other people don't, but these are quite big stamina sinks. I mean, there's 30 to 40 stamina a day just in these daily missions for money and Zenny and hidden potential orbs. So if you really wanted to factor that in, you could, and you probably should. But of course, we're only going to look at new content first and then discuss what else you could have used on your stamina. Obviously, the Trial Towards a New Horizon event technically does have a new stage. That new stage had to be run 20 times. So I guess there's another 200 stamina in there. But due to the fact that some people, A, may not have run it, and B, it's kind of a permanent event that's added up, and C, I just know people don't like running that kind of event. I'm not going to include it into that content. So now let's talk about challenge content. Obviously, we got 2 new Dokkan events. Very, very cool. Just running those Dokkan events once obviously requires some stamina, 40 stamina. But I'm not going to just factor that in. I'm going to average out that anyone who spent a quantity of stones above 400, 500 stones, even veteran players probably would have got at least 1 or 2 new units, or would have at least Dokkan Awakened 1 or 2 units. Because it's on average 70 to 77 medals per unit, I just kind of said that we're going to take 25 stamina and times it by 11 attempts. And that gives us 275 stamina, and most times it'll be 2 units. So we're looking at roughly 550 stamina spent on Dokkan Awakening new or newly received units during the event. That is a very, very lowballed estimate, because new players will have tons and some players will have a lot more depending on what they picked up. So in terms of Extreme Z areas, obviously we got 2 Extreme Z areas, 3 units in the one, and obviously in the Ginyu Force 1, 5 in that one. Extreme Z areas are very easy. It takes roughly 185 stamina per unit, because you have to generally do 5 attempts on stage 1 and 5 attempts on stage 2. So what that does is that leaves us with 925 stamina roughly for the Ginyu Force and 555 for the Planet Namek Saga. Obviously, again, it's going to depend on your luck. Maybe you pick up extra question marks and you use less stamina. Maybe you don't pick up any and you use a lot more stamina. It's just going to depend on your luck. Maybe you had to retry, maybe you didn't, maybe you screwed up. There's some factors that can be involved, but generally we're going to average it on the 10 attempts because that's what the mission states, and it's generally a rule of thumb from what I've seen. And then obviously there is other content. We're not going to talk about that content right now, but if we just talk about the Breaking the Siege event, even if you were to only attempt each stage once, just for the bare minimum rewards, it is 50 stamina. Obviously, we have other events like the Guru event and the Planet Namek event that originally came out for the EX orbs. We also had the Kai event, but that was 0 stamina. The Guru event was up for 14 days and was 420 stamina, which obviously is something that helps out quite a bit. It wasn't that great a link leveling stage for me, but I know obviously I still ran it most days, so it was a big stamina dump. And then we have the Planet Namek Saga event for the EX orbs, and we had the Kai event. So Now, obviously, that's just talking about all of these events, and roughly your total usage of stamina from all of that new content plus Dokkan Awakening, just 2 new units, comes to roughly 4,227 stamina, which roughly makes up 37% of your stamina total you would have received throughout the celebration. Now, we're just going to briefly talk about this because does this all constitute content? So, for me, things like the Guru event, Bulma event, although they are great in terms of rewards, at least the Bulma one is, it is difficult to classify them as brand new content. They're not necessarily anything that is partially engaging. Events, I consider new content because it is somewhat engaging. You have to at least engage for the new unit, whether it's tedious or not. It is something you have to do. Another thing we have to factor in, as you can see here, is obviously the 4 times XP on quests. A lot of people would have been farming that for XP, link leveling, all those sort of things, and would have ranked up. Ranking up increases your stamina pool, but for people that are farming quest for rank up XP or are farming for link leveling, they're already dedicating themselves to utilization of that extra stamina. So as much as it will increase your stamina pool during the event course, it's not something that I think we should factor in, because people who are really, really going to use it are dedicating to farming stamina quite heavily. So it is something that I don't think we can just kind of say, oh, well, I ranked up like 3 or 4 times during the event. I got extra stamina. I wasn't able to use it. The only reason you ranked up was because you were playing the game more frequently. So that is something you do have to factor in. So in terms of new in-game content, this is content obviously that, isn't necessarily stamina expending, but it is content that people do enjoy. We obviously got a little bit of that. So we got the collection of epic battles, which from my end is a great event. I really, really enjoyed it. I think it's a really, really fun event. And the epic collection of battles probably totals in at the most in-game content we received. It takes roughly 20 to 30 minutes per run. And there are 3 category missions per stage, and there were 2 stages added. So if you were just someone who wanted to get the bare minimum of rewards and you completed it in the bare minimum of time, you're looking at anywhere between 2 to 4 hours, depending on A, how long it takes, and B, if you even have the units to do the category challenges. Some of them required LRs, some of them required units that came later on in the celebration. And so, realistically, there are some factors to involve there, but I would say anywhere between 2 to 4 hours is probably what we got out of that content. So, not too bad, but it is very dependent on A, whether you wanted to take long or slower, or what kind of team you used, and B, those units. We also got 3 EZAs. EZAs, although I know they are technically not necessarily end game content, they are still additional content people do quite enjoy for the rewards, obviously for powering up your characters as well. And if we just take a look at Frieza, roughly 2 minutes for the final stage there. If we do it along a curve, I would honestly say that each EZA, depending on how much you focus on it or not, probably takes between 30 to 40 minutes in total, for these base standard EZAs, and I'd probably say around about the same for the Bardock EZA due to its difficulty. So, if we just looking at that, based on my experience, obviously my reviews, my videos alone, about these events where I just do a rundown on them, doing the most difficult stages do take, 12 to 16 minutes. So, talking about those, that's probably another 2 hours or so worth of content in the form of EZAs. And I would say it's content people really don't mind doing. Then when we look at things like the boss rush that we got, when we look at things like people doing the God of Destruction events with their new units, whether they're doing them for the first time or they're just trying out their units to see how they did. When we look at people trying things like the LGEGT, with their new units, when we look at people maybe taking on ESBR, SBR, all that kind of content with their new units, there is additional content created by units coming out. So if we just take each LR, we look at something like testing them out in the Gods of Destruction event, it's just 10 minutes. I mean, you've seen my review videos. It's just 10 minutes to try out a unit in there, but 3 or 4 new LRs, some new units, and all of a sudden, you know, you're looking at just between ESBR and the Gods of Destruction event, probably an hour of just trying out new units. I don't know if you got a new DFE maybe, or maybe you have never done them before. So there is some new content there as well. So if we add all of that up together, we are looking at 7 to 8 hours or so of new endgame content. Now, if you spread that out over a period of 40 days, which is roughly 5 weeks or so, you obviously are only looking about an hour and 20 per week. This is obviously not factoring in, you know, doing anything else or whatever. So you've got about an hour and 20 of endgame content per week, which for me, I think is fine. I think it's personally fine. I don't see a problem with it. If you were to knock week 3 into a 1 week celebration, that number would shoot up to around about 1 hour 30, 1 hour 40. And now for me, you know, when you play MMOs or you casually play MMOs or things like that, you roughly play 3 to 4 hours of casual content a week between your raiding cycles, between your dailies, and that is probably, I mean, depending on which MMO you're playing, it's probably between 3 to 4 hours a week of content that you can get. So when you have a phone game giving you about an hour and 20 during a big celebration, I think that's about right. Phone games for me shouldn't consume more than that kind of time per week. I don't want to actively have to look at my phone for more than that kind of time per week. So I think realistically that's good. I think if you do cut the celebration down, ramp it up to 1 hour 30, 1 hour 40, I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I think for people who like playing Dokkan, that's probably the perfect amount. That extra 20, 30 minutes of saturation of content is really great. And that's not factoring in things like Ultimate Clash, Chain Battle. Ultimate Clash is more like an hour worth of content if you do all the attempts. Chain Battle, not so much content, it's, you know, 20, 30 minutes. But yeah, I definitely think knocking back just 5 days, just 5 or 6 days off the event, pushes that number up to an hour and 30 of endgame content per week, and it knocks down our stamina, and it changes our stamina usage to being pretty much nigh on 47% for the new events, which is good. I mean, if you factor in farming SAs, farming new units, farming link levels for people who want to die inside, there is plenty of content for people to do with that excess stamina. Just adding in dailies alone, the 45 stamina for performing your dailies alone over that 40-day period consumes another 18% of your stamina. So just doing your dailies, just doing things like that will naturally consume 20% of any given bit of stamina you receive during the day, which makes sense. I mean, if you take, you know, 40 and divide it by 288, you get roughly 15%. So it does work out to that kind of level of usage. So overall, I think they just need to change the events. They need to knock down about 6 days worth of time off of part 3. And then I think otherwise the spread of content is very, very good. I think the stamina usage that they require from you is very good. I don't want new events to take more than 40, 50% of total stamina during a period, because I do think it's a bit excess. And yeah, but let me know what you guys think down in the comments below. And as always, stay safe, and I'll see you in the next video. Until then, bye.